What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So I am back on the Crew 2 again because I've been playing this game a bit recently with it being on sale, and there's something else I have to talk about. There is one thing I really miss from this game, guys, that is not in Motorfest, and guess what that is? The race variety. Now hear me out because I do know on first glance you're probably like, bro, what? But here's the thing, guys, there is so many races in this game, and here's a good confirmation of it, by the way. 362 events here in the Crew 2. Now, I'm sure you're probably going to be like, well, they're on like the same track, and some of them are, but they're still going to be different. The reason why I think about this so much, though, is there is so many different races to do in this game, and there's going to be a huge variety for each class, though. Like, for example, let's say you want to do a rally raid event. Those are basically everywhere. Let's say you want to do a rallycross event. There's going to be actual rallycross events like going up a mountain. Then there's also going to be legitimate track-based events with jumps and stuff, which is going to be pretty dang awesome. Then we're also going to have touring car races, aka racing from Motorfest, to where you can actually race on the road or do racetrack events, and they are literally everywhere. I think there's like 4 or 5 of the tracks around the entire map that you can race on, and there's going to be different versions of those said tracks at the same location. It's going to make it insanely fun to do it. On top of that, guys, we're also going to have a ton of different drift events, basically all over the entire map and basically all the cities to where you can mess around with it. We're going to have like tighter tracks in like the city itself, and then closed off ones on top of it. It's so dope. The other thing I really do like is the amount of different races for the street racing category and the lovely hypercars. But here's the one thing I was thinking about, though. Not only is there going to be a ton of different variety of races, but there is going to be a lot more races for the classes as well. Have to admit this right now, guys, I am a bit frustrated with this in Motorfest. I feel like everybody is, and I do know some people might be like, well, dude, like, leave it alone, like, stop talking down to it. Here's the thing. Can we actually not get angry at the fact that we are legitimately only going to have 2 drag events in the whole game, bro? Like, there is no way that is enough events for a drag race car, bro. Like, you can barely level them up. You have to do the exact same 2 events over and over. It is not a fun experience. Meanwhile, in this game, we're actually going to have a good amount of drag events that mix up the actual atmosphere, and then you can actually level up your car and get the parts you want for it. That way, it's going to be a better experience besides farming the exact same 2 events, which, by the way, I did actually do that for legitimately 6 hours to get mine maxed out and get a Nitro Canvas set. I did the same 2 events for 6 hours, man. And guess what? When I was done, I did not want to do any more drag events at all. In fact, I really don't even want to use them because there's not a reason to use them. The other classes I would like to see something, guys, which I do have a video about this coming out, by the way, about talking about certain classes that were better in this game, and I feel like they were basically taken down a bit in Motorfest. That is actually going to be more monster truck events and demolition derby. Like, bro, where are those events? There is legitimately none of them. This is something I really did want because that way you can level them up. Instead, you're probably going to be doing some of the navigation races and stuff in a monster truck because you probably did the exact same events in a rallycross vehicle, also most likely the same events in something like a hypercar and a streetcar, so you probably want different events. In this game, you can actually grind out some of the races, like the one that's down in Miami, for example. Or you can actually go over to like the main track ones, do backflips and all that, grab the point things, and get parts that way if you want to. Like, there's so many different ways to do it. The other class, guys, I just do not understand it. Like, they did end up adding the Demolition Rail to the game, but let's be real, is anybody actually playing that game mode? Last time I tried to get on that game mode, I could not even find a full lobby, bro. Like, it was pretty awful. Considering that's a legit game mode online, there's nobody on it, is kind of scary. But a lot of players might be like, well, what if I want to level up a Demolition Derby car and do Demolition Derby events? Here's the thing, man, there isn't any of them in the game. This is really frustrating, though, because for that fact, though, we don't have any of the Demolition Derby races, so guess what that means? You're probably going to have to do some of the main tracks you most likely grinded with the hypercars, street, rallycross, rally raid, racing, and I could pretty much keep going on with this on the same exact events that you already did with those classes to level up Demolition Derby, because there is no specific classes for them. Wouldn't that be dope having like actual Demolition Derby events with like the things like spinning around, you have the other racers crashing into you and stuff like that? That'd be dope. Then we also have the regular Demolition Derby events where you have to crash each other out, which kind of makes sense considering it's called Demolition and Derby. Am I right? I mean, that kind of adds together. And I also feel like another way to look at this, though, that does frustrate me, guys, I have to admit, and yes, I am using that word a lot because, well, I mean, I am. And there's also a few other classes I did want to touch on, guys. Now, again, I feel like I'm not the only one in this boat, though. I have seen a lot of people talking about this, especially the dragster category. When I was making those videos for that class, like leveling them up, I had multiple people going, wait, man, there's only 2 events, and yes, there's legitimately 2 of them. The other class I did want to talk about real quick is going to be the motocross bikes. Now, I do know you could probably come in and go, well, none of these classes actually matter, man. Like, those aren't the big part of it. Well, I hate to say this right now, man, but they are part of the game probably, so you should most likely have events for them. There were so many events for each class in the crew, too, that when you look at something like Motorfest, I feel like some of the classes in the game were basically like a filler content, and they probably weren't meant to actually be in there. Serious question, actually, on top of that. If Motorfest was the first crew game to ever come out, do you guys actually think legitimately there would be motocross bikes and monster trucks in that game? I would almost guarantee you none of those classes would be in that game most likely because, well, they probably carried them over from the Crew 2. That makes the most sense to me. If we actually had a brand new game called the Crew Motorfest, let's just say that. The Crew 2's never a thing, the Crew 1's not a thing. They would most likely not even have planes in that game because there's really not a reason to have them. And then on top of the planes though, I also feel like the power boats are most likely in a similar state. We do know there's not a ton of events for those either, and I feel like players do not like the way they handle. Again, guys, I am going to touch on this in a video very soon. This has actually been bothering me a bit, so I did want to talk about that, which I feel like everybody feels that way. But I also have a video coming out talking about how the other classes need love, because I really do feel like some of them are going to be afterthoughts. Like when Motorfest came out, man, don't get me wrong, I like the game, but like, looking at some of the event lists and all that, I'm like, wait, bro, like, where are the events for this class? There's not a lot for this one. There's also all around the same events, basically around the map, to where you can use pretty much the same cars on all of them. But here's the thing, though. If you're doing the same races in a hypercar and a street car and a racing car and a rallycross car and a rally raid, think you guys see where I'm going with this. And that's the crazy part, though, because I do know for a fact people are also feeling the exact same way. Think about this for a second, guys. If you are doing the exact same events with all like 10 classes in the game, you are most likely probably going to get bored of those events because they're all basically going to be the exact same thing. There is not going to be a big variety in each class that you can go mess around with. Like, how many legitimate rallycross events are in the game? What is it, like 3 or 4? And you have an entire class there, you're going to do all the events. You're probably going to get pretty bored of leveling that class up, then you have to do the exact same events you did in a hypercar. This is also why I think the entire summit design in Motorfest is completely doomed in a way, because all the races keep repeating themselves every single week. There is not enough variety in the events to make the summits a bit more fun, like they were in the Crew 2. That's a big concern of mine, to be honest, because I like the summits, and as of right now, I have not seen a single thing about them changing anything about it in the upcoming update. And I feel like that should probably make everybody a bit worried, because as of right now, guys, the other thing I saw, though, we are only getting more Grand Race tracks in that update. There is no PvP things being changed, at least from what I saw, and the posts they have been putting online, which is also a bit scary. Wouldn't you guys rather have more fun in the summits and stuff like that with a bigger variety of events? But I also feel like this is going to come down to something else, the playlist design. I'm also going to touch on this in a future video, so stay tuned for that one. But we can all agree, though, the playlist takes so dang long to make. There's so much involved in them. They have to do all the challenges, the rewards, and then there's like 10 to 12 events in them. And then boom, the entire playlist is done. If we actually look at the races and all that in the Crew 2, we actually have a ton of races being added. And they're not going to be tied to like 25 different challenges, all kinds of things. They can throw them in there. They're not going to have to put photo ops in there and all kinds of like locations. Like, it would be so much easier to just add the events into the game instead of having a playlist tied to every single one. And I'm also saying that because by a standpoint of it taking a long time to make them, I feel like the way they did it in the Crew 2 would have been easier to put more events into the game itself. I do know for a fact right now, guys, I've been seeing this everywhere. People want more motocross events. There is legitimately, I think, one real motocross event in the game, which you also have to do the same event with a monster truck because there isn't any of those either. So I feel like having more track-based events now. I do also understand part of this can come down to the map size. I do get that. I do think that's probably going to be one of the big issues with not having enough events. But I feel like how do you go to 360 plus events to something much lower with multiple classes not having enough events? We all do know the planes have a few, the powerboats have a few, but again, it's not enough to actually get the game going and level those classes up. Now, guys, I also do want to apologize if that did come off as a bit of like ranting and stuff, but I have to be honest. I have such a big passion for gaming, man. I want all of these games to do great. I do not like seeing the actual potential of them most likely being squandered. Jumping back into the Crew 2 and playing this game a bit more really has opened my eyes up so much. I do not want to see Motorfest be squandered or most likely is a failed game or something, because I feel like the overall potential is there. The thing is though, guys, they have to add bigger updates to it. I do understand like the entire map expansion is coming and stuff, but like if you look at something like the Crew 2, guys, the amount of events, the things to do, the overall design of it, the biggest question I have though, can Motorfest truly get to that point? Like, is it possible? Or are they most likely going to work on the Crew 3 and then probably take the flame there after something like the success of the Crew 2? It's hard not to think about it. And I do understand like coming across most likely talking down about the game. The biggest thing about that is we just want it to do great. All the content creators feel the same way. I want Motorfest to be good. Like it's an upgraded version of the Crew 2. At least for the graphics, I would say, and like the handling and physics part of it. But I think we can all admit the overall content part is 100% on the Crew 2 side. Like, jumping back in this game, man, I have been having so much fun on these races. There's so many of them. There's so many rallycross events you can do. Like, I've been going back and forth on them, driving different cars, different atmospheres on a mountain and a racetrack in a city. Like, there's so many things. Jump into a motocross bike, head over to LA, then jump over to, like, the Washington race, jump around, do that. Head over to, like, the Arizona Canyon race. Like, there's so many different varieties of them. If you don't feel like doing that, then go do like a long touring car race across like multiple different states in the game. Jump on a street car or something and go do a long race in there. Do a hypercar race. Do the lovely New York race, which is still so dang famous. On top of that, guys, you can then do a bunch of different airplane races if you want. You can then jump into like a powerboat race. There's a lot of those. There is just a huge variety of the events everywhere. I want this in Motorfest. And I feel like a lot of people are like, nah, bro, like, this would be dope. I would love to see it. And the best part, though, is if we had a bunch of events in the game like that, like a huge variety, guess what that would do? We would not only have better PvP, hopefully in the future, big fingers crossed on that. And the other thing is better summits with more variety of events in them. Guys, think about how amazing that would actually be. Like, oh my goodness, it would be incredible. Do let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. The biggest thing as a community is we all want the games to succeed, right? The best way to do that is talk about what players want, talk about some of the flaws and stuff, and get that stuff out there to get it addressed or at least changed in a better way.